Hello and welcome to another Atypical Philosopher video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is a Ukraine War Updates extra video with the juicy nuggets to give you the context of the war, some extra information and just stuff to get your teeth into. Love it or hate it, I'm here. And this is what I do. Okay, where are we going to start? Well, I'm going to start by talking about cruise missiles. Cruise missiles have been obviously all over the news for a good couple of weeks as Russia is expending a good amount of cruise missiles hitting Ukraine and trying to take out key energy infrastructure. We've got let's listen to Zelensky, President Zelensky. Here's a little quote from what he says here. They just lie. Are they crazy? Are they ill? I can't understand what's in their heads. How can they talk? How can we talk to them if they fire 54 rockets on us in half a day? This is talking about negotiations with Russia. So let's President Zelensky lead us into what I'm going to say about the cruise missiles.
It's not the problem. They lie. They want to, by diplomatic directions, stop the war. It's lying. Yesterday they said, we are ready. Ukraine is not ready. And today they attacked us by 54 rockets. Well, they are crazy. So they are ill. I can't understand. On their head. So what they are speaking about? How we can speak if they attacked us by 54 rockets this day, half of the day. What about their speaking now? I think they live in another planet. It's not the problem. They lie. They want to,
That's a really good point. I think they're living in another planet. If they want to negotiate, if they're making sort of overtures about negotiating, and trying to say, oh, the ball's in Ukraine's court. It's like, if you really want to negotiate, don't send 54 cruise missiles in half a day into our country to take out civilian infrastructure. It's absolutely outrageous. Anyway, so the question that's often been asked is, because I make these claims and because other people make the claims that Russia are clearly expending a large amount of their stocks of cruise missiles, and this is evidenced by the fact that they're using S-300s, that they're using poor quality cruise missiles rather than their best cruise missiles, and so on and so forth. There are lots of bits of the jigsaw that when pieced together lead you to think that they're expending their cruise missiles at a rate that's pretty much unsustainable. They can't make them quick enough to replace them. They must be running low on stocks. Well, here's something from the Ukraine the latest podcast from the other day, and this is Telegraph talking about the actual numbers of stock.
Now, Alexei Reznikov, Ukraine's defense minister, he put out a tweet on October the 14th saying he was comparing the number of missiles of certain natures that Russia were assessed to have on February the 24th and as at that date, October the 14th. So he says that on that date, Russia started the war with this phase of the war with 444 of these cruise missiles as of February the 24th, and had used 213 by October the 14th. So if there's another 55 used today, that takes Russia's stocks down to 158. Reznikov also said that the Iskander, the short-range ballistic missiles, as of October the 14th, they had 124 left out of the 900 they started with in February, and the Caliber sea-launched missiles, they had 272 of 500. So these figures are a couple of weeks out of date, as I said. With the current wave of attacks against the national infrastructure, we think that these are the types of munitions that have been used. It's just notable. The reason I mention it is because it's notable that these numbers are very, very low. Now, these things don't get replaced very easily. A lot of them rely on technology from the West, which is obviously subject to sanctions. So Russia's ability to replace these missiles will be severely constrained. And this is one of the reasons we've mentioned many times on the pod why there are so many dumb bombs being used that are unguided and are going all over the place. Russia may think that they're trying to target military installations. I'm not sure that's true. They just seem to be able and willing to terrorize the population in the hope of breaking the national will to continue the fight. But it just shows you how close they are to actually running out of these stocks. So in response this morning, the Ukrainian MOD have put out a tweet saying, on the occasion of Halloween, the Russians decided to carry out another act of missile terror, but tomorrow is All Saints' Day. St. Javelin and St. HIMARS will subdue the evil spirits, which was quite a good response. And just one other thing.
So I think that's interesting for a whole bunch of reasons. Primarily, it does seem that they are running low, but then there's this sort of counterpoint that what does low really mean? Okay, Iskander missiles, so some of the better missiles, they're definitely struggling with stocks, but they still have a good number of hundreds of missiles. So there is still a substantial amount of destruction that can be caused. But then if they are releasing 54 a day, actually, if they were to do that every day, then that's less than a couple of weeks worth of cruise missiles, and then they got nothing. So on the one hand, they are running low. On the other hand, what does low really look like? Because there's still quite a number of these missiles left. But then to come back to that, yeah, but actually sustainably, they can't replace those. And once they're gone to a large degree. And actually, those hundreds of missiles still only represent, I don't know. It depends how many they're gonna send a day, but let's say a month's worth of ordnance. Anyway, it's interesting. Those are numbers, and they are again a good probably now 3 weeks out of date, or almost that 3 weeks out of date. So talking about ammunition, CNN is now reporting that the US is accusing North Korea of trying to hide shipments of ammunition to Russia. According to declassified intelligence, US officials believe that the surreptitious North Korean shipments, along with drones and other weaponry that Russia has acquired from Iran, are further evidence that even Moscow's conventional artillery arsenals have dwindled during 8 months of combat. North Korea is trying to hide the shipments by making it appear as if the ammunition is being sent to countries in the Middle East or North Africa, the intelligence says. Okay. This appears to be artillery shells, particularly. The recent intelligence comes about 2 months after the US intelligence community said that it believed Russia was in the process of buying millions of rockets and artillery shells from North Korea for use on the battlefield. So rockets, probably things like grad, rockets using grads and Smerch and those kind of pieces of kit. I don't know about ballistic missiles and cruise missiles. But certainly artillery ammunition. Now, there's been so many people claiming that, oh, do you know what? Russia are never going to run out of artillery. They've got so much artillery that they could sustain a war like this for, a decade or whatever. But then when you look at the amount of artillery shells they're firing every day, that's been dropping and dropping. And there are lots of reasons that could be, but like the degradation of their artillery pieces. So the fact that they are just getting artillery pieces blown up or captured, and that means they're going to be firing less. But also the fact that their supplies are dwindling. HIMARS have been hitting ammunition depots, 10 a penny. And that is surely going to have an effect on the stock of ammunition for their basic artillery units going forward. So it looks like they are looking to North Korea to help them out there. That just shows it's further evidence that Russia are in a bit of a predicament when it comes to the war from lots of different angles. Okay, let's move along to the Gepard or Gepard and the men operating them at the front line, donated by Germany to the AFU. Already around 30 are in the ranks of the armed forces. I've talked about these quite a lot. Autocannons with a radar on top of a tracked chassis. These have been really useful for working in networks to shoot down particularly Shahed drones, but also effective against cruise missiles. So that was something I wanted to mention. They've been shooting down cruise missiles. Just to repeat that, I did, I think, make reference to that this morning. But also the idea that they are running out of ammunition for these, and Switzerland is not allowing Germany to provide Swiss-made ammunition from German reserves. These kind of sell-on clauses are quite common to stop arms, get into the wrong hands and so on and so forth. But it's a bit of a problem when Ukraine seems to be an ally. Just keeping on Germany, they've transferred 7 bridge systems and 22 protected vehicles to Ukraine. So things like this, these are really, really useful. And I've talked about this again, I think, with Germany before, that they don't get enough props for sending over the stuff that isn't the glory stuff, like the stuff with big guns and the Panzer Howitzer 2000s and the Caesars and HIMARS. They quite often sending things like bridge systems and ARVs, recovery vehicles that can recover other vehicles that have been stuck or lost or whatever. They don't get the props for that, and they should do. So I'm giving them some respect. So the website of the German government states that another 478 vehicles are being prepared for shipment. So Germany is really stepping up by the looks of it. They got a load of slack at the beginning and throughout the conflict, but now they seem to be coming up with the goods. So that's fantastic news. Talking about recovery vehicles, I thought this was just an interesting video of a repair brigade and towing stuff through pretty deep water. It's a pretty good video. This, I think, it's they are prepared to pull a tank through a river to get it back to somewhere where it can be repaired and then used again on the front line. Whether that's a damaged Ukrainian tank or a captured Russian tank, I'm not 100% sure, but it looks a pretty old tank. And then look at these, just all working together. These are units that take. War isn't just about frontline soldiers, people shooting guns on the front or driving tanks on the front. War is about getting stuff, logistics, getting things from place to place, repairing them. And here's a brigade of people that are responsible for repairing damaged equipment. And that's really important. Okay, talking about other help, Great Britain is handing over has handed over 195,000 units of winter uniforms, first aid kits, and protective equipment. So general military equipment, really useful stuff that absolutely needs to be got to Ukraine. They're just about to go into winter. So each of the troops being trained in the UK is issued with personal protective equipment, including helmets, body armor, eye protectors, ear protectors, pelvic protection, and individual first aid kits, field uniforms and boots, cold and wet weather clothing. So when we have those 10,000 troops and another 10,000 troops coming over to get trained up, they're also being given equipment. Bergens, day sacks, webbing. So that's stuff to go around your connecting your sort of boots, your trousers. I was in a combined cadet force when I was at school, back when I was like a nipper. A teenager. I have to say, I absolutely hated it. And I hated it because we used 1947 like webbing and shirts. The shirts were like wearing sandpaper. They were absolutely horrible. We had to wrap these bits of webbing around the tops of our boots so that you can get water and stuff down your boot and mud down your boots, and things between the bottoms of your trousers and your boots and whatnot. So, but it was literally 1947 webbing. Anyway, there you go. That's just a complete random aside. Additional equipment required for field conditions, including ponchos, sleeping bags, and entrenching tools, and in order to ensure that they have everything that they need, bar weapons, when they return to Ukraine. So that's massively important. It's not just weapons and bullets and rounds and ammunition and guns. It's stuff like this that the Ukrainians really desperately need. But let's look at the other end of the war. This is Mariupol, which has been the scene of complete, just heartbreaking devastation. So here's some footage from Mariupol. There's 3 little videos here that just show you how absolutely horrific war is, not just from a personal level in terms of humanitarian issues, as in straight death and injury of human beings, but where they live. And you can only imagine, I talked about this with regard to, I think it was a Bakhmut or somewhere else the other day, saying, you're just going to have to rip it down and start again. Just all of that time, effort, energy, resources that was put into building these places and then having to be completely rebuilt. I don't know whether it's worth looking on the bright side here and saying, hey, maybe in 15 years' time, Ukraine will be the most modern country with incredibly efficient energy efficient buildings. Maybe there is some good that could come out of this. I don't know. We shall see. But it just is quite kind of heartbreaking to see stuff like this, and just minute after minute of completely ruined apartment blocks. Just a massive um, set of destruction over a wide area. Just absolutely incredible. And then you go back to places like Aleppo and uh, the sort of destructions there, and you see, I wonder what the common factors are. Oh, Russia, yeah, that was it. Indiscriminate destruction of civilian uh, buildings and infrastructure is well, it's a war crime. These are war crimes. This is every frame of this video you're watching is a war crime. It's worth remembering. And if you are pro-Russian and you come here to troll and say, "Oh yeah, yay the Russians," is this what you want? Would you like to be a civilian living in an apartment that's bombed by another army? Again, I don't want to get overly emotive here, but war is emotive. This is human catastrophe, and it's war crime. Anyway, there's been all this talk about the grain corridor that goes pretty much down the western side of the Black Sea that has been allowing Ukraine to get out its huge grain reserves that have been waiting to be put on the market for months and months. That was then finally allowed to get on the move with Russian blessings, if you like. There was a deal, and now they are rescinding that deal. But the problem is, Russia don't actually have that much power in the Black Sea, and Turkey have a fleet in the Black Sea that is massive compared to Russia. And if Turkey want that grain to get out, which they are, so Turkey are beginning to be pretty forthright in the sort of stuff they're saying in their diplomacy with Russia, and they have sided more with Ukraine than Russia over recent weeks. That now, that grain is getting out. Turkey is now openly defying Russia in the Black Sea and calling the Kremlin's bluff. Bulk carriers under the flag of Turkey will continue to export food from Ukraine despite the suspension of Russia's participation in the grain deal. You can absolutely bet your bottom dollar that Turkey's getting something out of this as well, as you would expect any country would be opportunistic like that, I'm sure. But yeah, they are. I'm not a fan of Erdogan at all, right? His politics, but he's been fairly shrewd in straddling the fence, and then when push comes to shove, and when opportunity arises, taking his foot from one side of the fence and putting it firmly, both feet firmly on the other, when it's advantageous for him and Turkey. So very much sort of like Lukashenko, trying to play not so much both sides, but trying to play Putin in this interesting game of chess that is Belarus, in terms of how much they support Russia in the conflict. This is Ragnar Gudmundsson again, giving data on the number of troops that Russia is losing and the number of officers, saying that the officers is becoming pretty problematic for them. There are horrific numbers of deaths on the front line and both sides of the war right now, but Russia seems to be losing an incredible amount of senior officers. The latest to die is commander of a helicopter unit, Lieutenant Colonel Vyacheslav Zangiev. So Gudmundsson says, my Russian friend and colleague has added 32 Russian officers to his list. In the last 30 days, 5.7 officers have been killed per day, and senior officers are 26% thereof. See the dashboard for development. So if you want to check this out in further detail, this is where to go. But suffice to say that the command structure of the Russian army is pretty terrible as it is. You then start taking those experienced officers out of the equation, and it becomes even more difficult for them to perform the basics of offense and defense in this war. And the numbers don't work in their favor, and they are going to be replaced with mobilized soldiers, one presumes, We have now seen the end of mobilization, apparently, but we are seeing the beginning of the annual conscription. So you are going to see a continued mobilization. It's just under a different sort of label. So it's not that sort of forced 300,000 mobilization. We're just moving from them to still mobilization, but your conscription for national service, and that will be continuing to draft in extra people. But it's not looking good. There are several videos like these online. There's a video I watched yesterday. I won't show it. It's too dark and doesn't show enough detail. But a massive brawl between mobilized troops at night in some barracks. Well, here is a protest, and let's just say what it says here. So I think this is a different protest. So I will show you two protests demanding payment that they were promised. So Russia is now walking back the promise of payment, at least for the time being, and they're obviously not happy about it. So things are not looking good in that particular base. Is that just an anecdote? Well, no, we are seeing this quite a lot. We've seen there's another video of people openly they're being told that they are not going to receive their immediate payment at 300,000 rubles, and they are not happy about it. So I won't play this whole video, but basically these guys are announcing that they're not going to get that, and it's not very well received by all these troops around. Then I presume some kind of officer, says her piece. And you've got open argument going on between these officers and the troops around. It's not a good look for the Russians at all. So mobilization is generally not going well, although they are getting boots on the ground, I guess. But it's how happy those guys are going to be, and whether they're more likely to run away and surrender than to fight and put their lives on a line. 2 people have died in another Russia on fire explosion in bitumen residue repository, or some kind of factory or somewhere. Again, this is it's about, is this just coincidence, or is this kind of stuff just happening way too much to be explained away, to be hand waved away with it being just sort of coincidence? It's just another example. If you want to follow the hashtag Russia on fire, you will get to see quite a lot of these happening on a daily basis. Sorry, and that Mariupol one I've shown you. Right, one of the last things I'm going to say is there was an interview in yesterday's Ukraine the Latest podcast where they talked to some Ukrainian guy who's in charge of a unit of these kind of things. So this is where your 4x4 gets adapted and you get grad rocket launchers, maybe 3 put on the back of these. I mean, we've seen this elsewhere. I think I've seen them in Armenia and other countries. This is not a new thing particularly, but this is a really innovative way of being able to use, say, captured grad vehicles where the chassis has been completely destroyed, but actually the rocket launchers are still serviceable or operational. Then you kind of split them up and share them amongst a bunch of these vehicles. This one's got a stabilizer on, so you get more accuracy for firing, and it doesn't rock a lot. This is some kind of Mitsubishi 4x4. Now, what the guy was saying, the Ukrainian commander was saying, these are better than HIMARS. These are more useful than HIMARS. I think there's a bit of poetic license there for sure. But the point that he was making was that they could drive these up. They were really stealthy. They were really quick. You drive them somewhere, fire off 3 rockets, and then drive off. And you're not going to be hit, realistically. But he was saying that they were able to fire these within 2 kilometers of the Russian troops on the front line. So they could rock up to just over a mile away from Russian troops, fire a bunch of grads into the Russian occupied territory, hit some targets, and then drive off. and go and get some more rockets. And these are apparently, so I was wondering really how useful these were. 3 of these rockets aren't particularly potent rockets in the grand scheme of things, but then this is almost, you see it in the context it is. These are just small little units, vehicles, drive around, take a couple of pot shots, drive back. But if you've got enough of these working, these can be a right pain in the backside for the Russians in this case. And this is what the Ukrainians are themselves saying. They are saying that this kind of setup is being really useful for them. And here's an example of the vehicle. Well, here's the vehicle we just seen, just from another angle. So 3 tubes on the back, and this is all taken from a grad or smirch or whatever it is, BM21 grad. The chassis was destroyed, but the rocket launcher part of the vehicle is perfectly usable. Anyway, that's quite interesting. Another part from the same podcast was talking about how Iran are building their Shahed drones and shipping them to Russia, and that even though they've got sanctions, they're getting like engines off AliExpress from China. They're getting parts from Poland. They're getting just stuff that's all bog standard commercial things that aren't victim to sanctioning, but then they are able to put all this together and co-opt all these things to a military purpose and create a drone and sell the drone. And there's going to have to be some serious thought about how to fix that problem and what to do with the sanctions. And Iran's got issues of its own at the moment. It's interesting to see how that will affect the public disorder and uprising in Iran, how that will affect the war effort in terms of Iran supporting Russia. But they are building a whole number of these out of stuff that isn't sanctioned. So how do we deal with that? Anyway, that's that for today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Thanks for sharing, liking, subscribing, doing all those stuff. All that stuff. There's Buy Me a Coffee if you appreciate, or PayPal or anything like that. Always crazily appreciated. I'm trying to make this a thing. Although here's an interesting thing. I'd be interested to see what you think. I do recognize that there's a number of channels doing this, right? A lot of channels are analyzing the war in the same way, like a news, like in this, because I think about this, why I'm doing this, and whether this is right to be so interested in war, and am I being opportunistic about war? And I think no, I'm not. I am super interested in this. This interests me for geopolitical reasons, and I'm reporting on this in the same way that mainstream media reports. There's no difference, except I'm getting my information from a whole variety of places, and I'm not beholden to the publishing rules of mainstream media, which means I can probably say a greater scope of things I can say, and all this. But I always analyze my own behavior and whether it's the right thing to do. But I have absolutely no problem with doing what I'm doing. But what I find interesting is, as soon as this war ends, and I hope it ends soon, the sooner the better for humanity, right, for the world, for so many reasons. But there's going to be an awful lot of YouTubers that suddenly got nothing to do. Like, if Putin says, "Oh, right, let's give up. This has all been wrong. Sorry about that," and the war stops, then there's just going to be so many YouTubers going, "Oh, what am I going to talk about now?" And also a lot of people not interested in the other stuff. And this then gets me on to questions about, why am I so interested in this? I look at my stats, and most of the people watching this are men. There are women obviously watching this, I know, because I respond to their comments, and thanks to everyone. But what is it about war and about this kind of coverage? Does it ignite the childhood idea of being an armchair general, playing games and war games and all these kinds of things, and being interested in those kind of films? There's a background to our psyche that is then reignited in conflicts like this. So you've got the horrors of war, but then you've got the interest as an armchair general and someone interested in how war works. based on all those things from throughout your life. I don't know. All these thoughts go around my head. It's like, why am I interested in all this? I have always been interested in politics, and I guess in war as well. As a kid, I had 144 copies of the War Machine magazine, right? Just, one of those monthly magazines that came out, your parents got you into, and then they get sucked into having to buy it every month. And I was, pretty interested in all that kind of stuff. And I guess this might be an element that I'm interested in what you think. What do you think about this? About what your behaviors will be at the end of this war, whether you'll still be interested in watching stuff on geopolitics, or is it just war that's got you interested, and the geopolitics is the icing on the very horrific cake? Or will you still be interested in listening to stuff that's not obviously war based? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts on all of these ideas. But in the meantime, I'm always going to say you can support the channel with uasupporter.com/ATP by buying some stash from reporting from Ukraine. Sorry, you can get yourself a laptop case to show your support. There you go, and they look pretty cool. And I will get a little bit of commission as a channel. So thank you for your support. I'd be really fascinated in your comments about all the things I've been talking about, particularly that very last section. And remember, always question your own motivation and your own reasoning and your own behavior, because we need to hold ourselves to account. If we're going to hold other people to account, we need to hold ourselves to account. Anyway, thank you so much. You take care, and I'll speak to you tomorrow.